Afternoon, peeps. Good afternoon, everyone. How we all doing? Hopefully, you guys are all doing well. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button. If you guys are new to the channel, don't forget as well to like and share the vids. So many fights on the weekend. So many. I've not caught up with everything. Obviously, I was working on the DAZN card. Probably too many fight cards, if I'm honest with you. I can't remember a time on a weekend where all four broadcasters over here have had fights on. So that's DAZN, that's BT, that's Channel 5, and Sky Sports have got a fight card this evening. I think it's a bit too many, especially when you're trying to compete for eyeballs with the World Cup, right? I mean, I don't know how many were at the O2 Arena yesterday, but I heard there was around 1,500 to 2,000 for Zach Parker, John Ryder. At the OVO Arena, Wembley, where I was, there was probably around 4,000, maybe 5,000 for Dillian Whyte Franklin. So obviously people are not responding to these fight cards with bums on seats. And I think it's because every fight card is spreading itself too thin. It's spreading itself too thin from top to bottom. You know, when people say things like boxing's dead, and you know, a lot of people say, all right, this era of boxing isn't as good as what it was 6 years ago in the UK, or even further back 20 years ago when you had the likes of Ben and Eubank, or you know, Calzaghe and the start of Hatton, etc. It's not that it isn't as good as that, because I think it is. I think there's enough talent here where it would be amazing. Like, imagine if all the talent that you see in British boxing was under one broadcaster, one promoter. And I'm not trying to say who that should be. I'm not saying that should be DAZN or Matchroom or anyone, Frank Warren and Queensberry. But just imagine all this talent that we have over here right now was one broadcaster, and we had amazing stacked fight cards every single weekend. And we could do that with all this talent. Now, when you think of what we've got, like, just look at the heavyweight division. Right? And I'm going to mention some names. And I'm not trying to say they're all elite, but just the heavyweight division alone. So obviously you've got the big boys and Fury and AJ and Joe Joyce and Dillian Whyte and Chisora. But then you got guys coming up as well. Fraser Clark's coming up. We saw Fabio Wardley last night. Literally, you could go on. I could mention probably 15 heavyweights from the UK. And then you even go to the cruiserweight division of Riakporhe and Chris Billam-Smith and Lawrence Okoli, and we saw Chevron Kark and Lawal's fighting tonight. Light heavyweight, Callum Smith, Boatsi, Yard. Like, we are stacked. Honestly, go down all the divisions and there's depth there. But the problem is all the talent is being spread over four broadcasters. This small UK, and we've got four broadcasters showing fights. It's really bad. Honestly, it's really bad. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think anything can happen, because I think all four broadcasters are being backed quite well. Sky are going aggressive with their recruitment of fights. Obviously, Eddie Hearn and DAZN are able to not just sort of bring fighters over from the UK, but America. Wasserman are doing good stuff with Channel 5. I speak to their presenter, Jeanette Quatchy, quite a lot. And Frank's putting on decent shows as well. So, boy, honestly, I feel like British boxing's killing itself. It could be so good right now. Again, everyone refers to sort of 5-6 years ago. And I guess 5-6 years ago, or maybe even just before that, I think it was before Frank got the deal with BT, it felt like everything was Sky Sports, didn't it? Sky Sports and Matchroom. So you felt like all the talent, probably wasn't the case, but it felt like all the talent was on Sky Sports and Matchroom. So you felt like it was amazing fight cards, or at least deep fight cards, every other weekend. Unfortunately, we're just not getting that right now. And again, looking at the numbers of people that were in attendance at every fight over the weekend, and I guess it's going to be the same for Boxer this weekend, fight fans have kind of had enough of it, kind of had enough of these thin cards. Let's talk about the fight card I was at yesterday, headlined by Dillian Whyte versus Jermaine Franklin. I kept on saying on the broadcast that the people's main event was Fabio Wardley, Nathan Gorman, and that was a shootout. I absolutely loved that fight. And credit to Fabio Wardley. I think I spoke about his rise from sort of white collar boxing to now becoming British champion. Like, honestly, the peak really should have been an area title. But he's going. I don't know how far this journey is going to go, but it's an exciting one. Just because Fabio Wardley is one of those fighters that if you hit him, he hits you back. And I know that might sound a bit sort of crazy, but most fighters, when you watch them, when they get tagged, they go on the retreat, right? It's almost like they've been taught through years of the amateur system and years of coaching and training, like when you get hit, maybe just cover up a little bit, take a breather, go on the back foot, maybe fight off the ropes a little bit, just take your time. Wardley, who doesn't obviously have that amateur background, is like, fuck it. You hit me, I'm going to hit you harder. Almost a bit like playground bully stuff. And Nathan Gorman hit him. There was a guy to my left who was part of Nathan Gorman's team who kept on screaming, "Go on, Gorman, he's only a white-collar boxer." And there were times when Gorman just looked so much better than Wardley. Not for a long period, but for maybe about a round. And I was thinking, shit, like maybe Gorman is a bit too skilled for him, as I thought he could be. So he kept on screaming, white-collar boxer, white-collar boxer. And security tried to kind of calm him down a bit. But then Gorman hit Wardley with a shot, which obviously split Wardley's nose. And I was thinking, shit, maybe this is the step too far. But what Wardley did immediately was like, fuck it, I'm going to hit you back. I'm going to hit you back harder. And Wardley hit him and hit him and hit him. Like 4 or 5 unanswered big right hands, massive ones. And then when he went down, I was right there. So I was really close to ring. So I was doing it in the studio, but I went ringside for the main event, or for the co-main, sorry. And Wardley looked over him and screamed at him, and blood came down. It was, if anyone's got the photograph of that, it must look like a really good photograph. Like, it went over him and started screaming. But then he tried to get him out of there in that round, and he was landing everything, but nothing clean. And I was thinking, I was standing next to Chris Lloyd, and I was saying, shit, Wardley might blow a gas tank here, If Wardley doesn't get him out of here, he's going to blow a gas tank. And at the start of I can't remember what round it was now. I think was it round 3 or 4, but at the start of that round, Wardley went on the offensive immediately again. And I was thinking, man, Wardley, you better slow down a bit. I don't know what your engine's like. You're not used to going the full distance. I mean, Wardley's knocked out 13 of his 14 opponents. Wardley's only been 5 rounds in the last 3 fights. I was thinking, slow down. But then Wardley got the job done. The towel came in. That surprised me a little bit. I don't want to... I'm always split with Sam fighters should go out on their shield. I'm always split by that. But it's a British title fight. I don't know what next for Gorman if he lost that fight. So I was thinking maybe just go out swinging a bit more. And he even seemed, when the towel came in, he was like, oh. Do you know what I mean? There was no protest. So I wonder if there was any problem in camp, but there was no protest. It was like, oh. And I was thinking, dude, you were having a lot of success in that sort of first round and a half. Like, come on, man. But yeah, just didn't want it. There was a guy. So there was that white collar guy screaming, but there was a guy next to him. I don't know who that was, but just before the final round, he went past security and security tried to stop him. But he kind of pushed security out of the way and he went to the corner. I don't know if that was Gorman's family member, but he almost seemed to be the one that said throw the towel in. So I don't know who that was. So maybe they just thought, you know what, we've seen enough. Enough's enough. But look, credit to Wardley. What an achievement. Big Fraser Clark was there. And I say big because that was my first time being that close to Fraser Clark, and he wants that British title fight. Fraser Clark is massive. I can't put into words how big that guy is. So that could be next for Fabio Wardley. I know people like David Adelaide, who fights for BT Sport. So this highlights the problem I was talking about. Fraser Clark is Sky. And don't get me wrong, they'll put themselves in a mandatory position, but if it wasn't that, the fights could just happen immediately. Fraser Clark's with Sky, David Adelaide's with BT. This makes it so difficult, man. That's why everyone sort of loves the UFC, right? Obviously, the UFC has other competitors, right? PFL and Bellator and ONE FC, but 99.9% of the best fighters fight in the UFC. So those fights happen like that. Whereas now, Wardley versus Clark probably ain't going to happen next. Wardley versus Adelaide, probably not going to happen next. And that's the problem with so many broadcasters. All right, that's the co-main. Let's touch on the main before we talk about Pat McCormack and Dickinson and Sandy Ryan. The main event, I said that Dillian Whyte, if he's still, and look, I know a lot of you, when I asked the question, is Dillian Whyte still elite? You lot came at me like he was never elite. And I know what you're saying. I'm trying to be fair to him because he had that good run. I mentioned that run of Chisora, Parker, Hellenius, Oscar Rivas. Struggled, but if you beat all those guys, you have to kind of say he's a decent fighter. But I said in order for me to kind of stay or say that he's still elite, he needs to look really good against Jermaine Franklin. Jermaine Franklin is at best, what's he, a B minus, C level fighter at best. I mean, his biggest win, Jerry Forrest, who's a decent guy, but Jerry Forrest isn't by any stretch of the imagination a top fighter. So I thought Dillian Whyte needs to show that he is way above your Jermaine Franklins. And by doing that, it's either a shutout or a knockout, or you just bust him up. And he did none of those. Honestly, he did none of those. The scores were obviously 115, 115, 116, 112 twice, so he won by majority decision. I tweeted, I don't know who's winning this fight, because it's difficult to score it when you're sort of working, you're not concentrating on the fight, you're trying to just do your notes. But a lot of you maybe thought Jermaine Franklin nicked it. That in itself is a problem. That in itself is a big problem. I said this on the video I did the other day. I can't remember the last time we've seen a really good Dillian Whyte performance. Again, I know someone will say that the rematch against Povetkin, I didn't think that was a good performance. I didn't. Remember, there was a lot of issues with Povetkin, COVID. Do you remember that? There was a lot of issues with Povetkin. So we've not seen a good Dillian Whyte performance for a long time, and we didn't see it last night. We just needed to see so much more from him. Like, there were times when I thought, okay, Dillian Whyte's kind of got this. He's gonna go through the gears here a little bit now. Didn't. Or every time he looked like he was throwing ones and twos, or when he would throw threes and fours, Jermaine Franklin would spring off the ropes and do his own threes or fours. Like, if anyone hurt anyone the most in that fight, I thought Franklin really hurt Dillian Whyte. The end of round 9. End of round 9, he hurt Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte stumbled back onto the ropes, but Dillian Whyte was, I don't want to say saved by the bell, but you never know, right? If that goes on a few more seconds, who knows? That's been a thing with Dillian Whyte, right? Parker, Rivas, if it goes on a few more seconds. But yeah, I wasn't super impressed with Dillian Whyte. I will say this, it's difficult. It was trying a few different things. I thought he looked a bit more tighter with his work, and he had this kind of crossover defense, and obviously that's what Buddy McGurk's brought into him. Buddy McGurk's only been working with Dillian Whyte 6 weeks, so it's going to be difficult, because I guess it's not going to be natural what you're doing, you're thinking about because of training camps as opposed to what you're just used to. There were a few times where Dillian Whyte threw that kind of looping overhand right and left, and that's kind of what we've seen from him. So he did revert to type a bit, but Dillian Whyte, again, if you're an elite level heavyweight, you should be blowing guys like Jermaine Franklin out of the water. That should just be easy work. And I know Jermaine Franklin's unbeaten, so you don't know where his limit is, but Dillian Whyte, if he wants to stay at that top table or get back to that top table, Jermaine Franklin shouldn't be a problem. Shouldn't be. I was watching it and I was thinking, what would AJ do to Franklin? Honestly, I was thinking this. What would Wilder do? So I'm not talking Usyk Fury. I was talking about the guys just below them. What would Ruiz do? What would even a Luis Ortiz do? A Frank Sanchez, a Jared Anderson, Fraser Clark, Joe Joyce. What would those guys do to Jermaine Franklin? I think they would all put him on his ass. Being serious, I think they're all Hergovich, even a Zhili Zhang. That's what I was thinking as I was watching. I was thinking, what would they do right now? I think they'll bully him. He's not the biggest heavyweight. I know he weighed around the same as Dillian Whyte, but you saw the size difference. And Dillian Whyte isn't the biggest, but Dillian Whyte should be imposing himself on him. He went to the body a few times, which was good. Obviously, that's where the nickname, the body snatcher, comes from. But I just needed to see a bit more. October Red, I want to shout her out. Doing a load of good stuff. October Red did an interview with Dillian Whyte after. And Dillian Whyte looked a lot more relaxed around her. And I think Dillian Whyte was quite open and saying, look, I guess he went into that ring with a bit of trepidation, right? I mean, he's got knocked out in his last fight. If he didn't win, there was talks about retirement. There was talks about, he said he spoke to people close to him who were kind of like saying, okay, if you look bad or you don't win. So maybe that was in his mind as well. And we never really take into consideration the amount of pressure these fighters are going into the ring with. So I will say this, look, there's a lot of pressure. You've been knocked out in 2 of your last 3 fights, a change of trainer, all that can add up to a lot. It can. And then there's the talk about AJ as well. That's added pressure, because you want to look good. AJ's ringside, which is never easy. But overall, got the win, which is the most important. I think, I was going to say people will forget that performance. I don't think they will. But I don't know how you sell the AJ fight in March now. So I think that's a difficult sell. I think, and Eddie said this when I spoke to him up top on the show. He did say it's not just about a win. In order to get the AJ fight, it's not just a win. You've got to look really impressive. And he didn't look impressive, did he? You know when it's not impressive when people think maybe the other guy won. So yeah, I was a bit disappointed. We didn't really see much of his jab. He's got really long levers, so a jab would have been good. But what I didn't really see is him just, and I don't know if this is the gas tank or what, but him just going for it. Like going for it. There were times when I was like, okay, go on, Dillian. Go on, this is it now. Go, Dillian, go. Nothing. But sometimes you've got to give credit to the opponent as well. And I thought Jermaine Franklin was maybe a bit better than we expected. Good hands, not really fast feet, but fast hands, good, explosive. Like, again, he threw, every time he thought like, oh, this might be Dillian's sort of chance here, Franklin kind of threw 3s, 4s and 5s. And as I said, hurt Dillian in the 9th as well. So, yeah, it'd be good to see Jermaine Franklin over here again, by the way. I mean, there are loads of decent heavyweights that we've got over here, which I think Jermaine Franklin would cause some problems to. So it'd be good to see him come over again. He's put his name out there now. People know who he is. A lot of people obviously tuned in. It was trending. The result was trending, at least on social media. So well done to Jermaine Franklin. Watching it again, I didn't score it, but I didn't think he won. Like, I would have been surprised. I think a majority decision sounds about right. I didn't think I would have been, if Jermaine Franklin was the winner last night after that fight, I'd have been like, whoa. So I didn't think he won. I think Mike Coppinger had him winning and a few others did, but I thought, without scoring it, I thought he won. Did you see David Hay's scorecard, by the way? I think David Hay had 4 rounds, which he scored 10-10. Now, don't get me wrong. The first round of a fight, okay. 10-10 is so rare after the first round. Like, so rare. For someone to have it 4 times 10-10, yeah, I don't know if David A should be scoring fights anymore. A quick one on Sandy Ryan, who got the job done against a much smaller, physically smaller opponent. But look, for Sandy Ryan, I'm not quite sure what they do. Chantel Cameron, Sandy Ryan's got the WBC international belt, so the next stage is the WBC title, right? But obviously Chantel Cameron's got that. I don't think Sandy Ryan's ready for Chantel Cameron. It's just a case of what you find, what's out there. You know who's out there, which would be a tough fight, really tough fight, but I like it. I like the idea of it. She's had a baby, but I think she's now back, so I'm not quite sure where she is physically. Lina Datu. I did hear that Lina Datu's back. You guys might remember Lina Datu fought Katie Taylor, gave Katie Taylor problems at Katie Taylor's only fight at 140. She's now back. That's a great fight. Let me quickly see if Lina Datu's actually had any fights since the baby. Remember the lady from Greece? I think she beat Baumgardner. Am I right? She did. She beat Baumgardner back in 2018. Okay, she is back. She came back in July. She won a 6-rounder. That's a decent opponent. Former world champion. Again, beat Baumgardner. Lost to Pursoon. Pursoon's another one. Pursoon will be interesting. So there are opponents out there. Pursoon or Lina Datu, I think, is a good one for her. A quick word on Dickinson and Pat McCormack. Firstly, on Dickinson, wasn't super impressed. I've heard a lot about him. Expected to see something a bit better. Wasn't impressed. Pat McCormack had a very slippery opponent. Very difficult opponent, but again, hearing so much about Pat McCormack and reading out his amateur record, and it's ridiculous, right? Olympic silver medalist, world championship, I think silver or bronze medalist, European gold, Commonwealth gold. I expected to see something really special. Didn't quite see it. Tricky opponent, but you're a standout, an amateur standout, a big name. Matchroom put him on. They put him on after Sandy Ryan. So I'm expecting to see something. And some of you might say, yeah, after Sandy Ryan. But Sandy Ryan, she's been fighting on Matchroom since the get-go. She's a decent name. But they obviously think highly of Pat McCormack. Didn't quite see it, but, first one, we'll see. Regis Prograis versus Cepeda. Obviously, Prograis got the knockout in the 11th. I haven't seen it. I've only seen the knockdown. I haven't seen it. What I will say, though, is congratulations to Prograis. Big win. Some of you are saying, does that make him the number one at 140 pounds? It's difficult, right? Josh Taylor, according to the record books, is still unbeaten, right? That's his belt that he gave away or got stripped of. And he's got a win over Regis Prograis. So I'll still have Josh Taylor as the number one, but it is now a very exciting division. I felt like it kind of went stale a little bit, but now when you think of Teofimo Lopez in the division, obviously he takes on Sandor Martin. In a couple of months, we do see Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall. Prograis there. Ryan Garcia, Javante really is a 145. If it's 136, it's a 145. So it's starting to get some sort of some movement to it again. And I look forward to it. I haven't seen the Zach Parker, John Ryder fight. I picked John Ryder to win that one. Obviously, Zach Parker's injured, but up until the injury, a lot of people were telling me, and if I'm following it correctly on social media, that John Ryder was having the best of it anyway. But we will get to that when I see it. I'll probably do a video, tomorrow after I've watched all the fights tonight. That's what I'm going to do. Boring old me is going to sit down and watch all the fights, or at least a lot of the highlights of them. Probably won't watch them toe to toe. Looking forward to seeing Azim Charlton today, by the way. I would have gone to that. Someone did offer me tickets to go to that, but I'm actually going to go to Undefeated Podcast Boys. So Travis and KG are doing a stand-up comedy show. So I'm going to that. Got to support your boys. All right. I think that is that. Very quick video. Hopefully you guys are all doing well. Stay safe. And peace.